The Amish, often misunderstood as completely rejecting modern technology, have a surprisingly intricate and resourceful relationship with electricity. Contrary to popular belief, they don't shun all forms of electricity. Their approach is far more thoughtful and, frankly, quite brilliant. They've crafted ingenious ways to harness energy that could make even the most devoted environmentalist envious. By balancing tradition and innovation, the Amish have created a system that might inspire solutions for modern energy independence, all without forcing you to abandon your Netflix binges. Let's explore how these master innovators manage to keep the lights on while staying true to their principles. Let me bust a common misconception right away. If you think the Amish reject electricity outright, prepare to be surprised. During my visits to Amish communities, and trust me, those trips were worth it for the homemade pies alone, I discovered their relationship with electricity is more like a carefully negotiated compromise than a flat-out rejection. It's a bit like my grandma claiming to despise technology, but somehow managing to text me every day. The reality is always more nuanced. What the Amish can or cannot use isn't uniform across all communities. Each Amish district, essentially their local community, operates under its own Ordnung, a German term for a set of rules. These guidelines vary widely between districts. The real decision-makers are the bishops and elders, who regularly convene to discuss and refine these rules. Think of them as the most intriguing politicians ever, except instead of debating over tax policies, they're deliberating on whether a certain type of battery storage might make their community overly reliant on the outside world. Their discussions aren't rushed. They can last hours or even days, weighing every benefit and potential drawback with care. So, what's absolutely off limits? Anything that connects directly to the public power grid. It's not because they see utility lines as inherently bad, but because such connections could open the floodgates to endless distractions. No late-night TikTok scrolling for them. But here's where their ingenuity shines. The Amish have devised incredibly clever methods to power their essentials without compromising their values. Imagine a real-world version of a survival game. But instead of mere survival, they're thriving and doing so sustainably. During one visit, an Amish farmer proudly showed me his workshop. To my surprise, it was more advanced than my own garage setup. The alternative energy solutions they've developed are nothing short of remarkable. Over generations, they've refined these systems to be both highly efficient and firmly aligned with their values. Their resourcefulness would leave even seasoned engineers impressed. What truly fascinates me is how different Amish communities have tailored their rules to suit their specific needs. Take Lancaster County, for example. Some communities there have discovered ways to power small refrigeration units for their dairy operations, while staying true to their beliefs. Meanwhile, in Holmes County, Ohio, you'll notice slightly different interpretations, allowing certain battery-powered tools and workshops. It's as if each community has developed its own formula for blending tradition with practicality, and remarkably, they've all made it work. The story of solar power among the Amish dates back to the 1970s, which might come as a surprise. While disco was making waves, some forward-thinking Amish individuals were quietly transforming their energy practices. The earliest instances were recorded in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, where a few bold pioneers decided to experiment with solar panels. One elderly Amish gentleman once told me with a twinkle in his eye, "We weren't trying to change the world, we just needed a better way to keep our milk cold." This wasn't about jumping on a trendy bandwagon. It was a thoughtful response to evolving economic challenges and the desire to maintain self-reliance. Today, solar panels are a common sight in Amish communities across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana, though they're often tucked away out of plain view. Each community has added its unique twist to the rules, much like how every family has its own version of a favorite recipe, like choufle pie. In Holmes County, for instance, some communities permit solar panels to power workshop tools, but stop short of using them for entertainment devices. In contrast, Lancaster County is home to solar-powered refrigeration units discreetly operating behind barns, ensuring dairy products stay fresh. These variations highlight a fundamental Amish principle. One size doesn't fit all when balancing tradition and modernity. Some communities allow only small solar panels dedicated to specific tools, while others have adopted larger systems for broader uses. The deciding factor is whether the technology enhances or undermines community bonds. As one Amish bishop explained, "If a tool helps us work together and uphold our way of life, it's worth considering. But if it separates us, that's where we draw the line." This philosophy has led to remarkable innovations. For example, some communities have established communal charging stations where families can recharge their essential equipment while catching up with neighbors. Solar panels in these communities must meet strict criteria, making even the toughest building inspectors seem lenient. For starters, panels must be out of sight from the road. No solar-powered fashion statements here. They cannot connect to the power grid, as independence is a cornerstone of Amish life. And they must serve a practical purpose rather than a mere convenience. Some districts even impose unique requirements, like only allowing solar panels that can be installed and maintained by community members. This hands-on approach has fostered a surprising level of expertise, with certain Amish individuals becoming highly skilled in solar technology. Each Amish district has discovered its own balance when it comes to adopting solar power. Some communities have become so skilled with these systems that they're even teaching their non-Amish neighbors, referred to as English by the Amish, a thing or two about sustainable energy. And if you think that's impressive, wait until you hear how they implement their setups. The placement of solar panels in Amish communities is a textbook example of practical engineering. Instead of installing panels on roofs, most families opt for ground-mounted systems. This makes sense. No one enjoys climbing up to clean panels, especially when it can be avoided. Typically, these arrays are positioned on the south side of buildings and carefully angled to capture maximum sunlight. One farmer proudly demonstrated how they used a simple shadow and stick method to determine the optimal angle. When it comes to power generation, an average Amish family's solar setup might look modest compared to what you'd find on a typical English home. But don't be deceived, these systems are incredibly efficient. A typical setup might consist of 4 to 6 panels, generating between 1.5 and 2 kilowatts of power. While that might not sound like much, it's more than enough to operate essential tools and keep a small workshop running. As one woodworker put it, "We don't need enough power to light up Times Square, just enough to run a saw and keep the butter from melting." What's especially ingenious is how the Amish adapt everyday tools to run on their solar setups. In one workshop, I saw standard power tools modified to operate on DC power. The modifications were so seamless that I couldn't initially tell they weren't standard equipment. When I mentioned this to the craftsman, he just smiled and said, "Necessity is the mother of invention, but simplicity is her favorite child." The Amish approach to solar power is about far more than keeping the lights on. It's a way to maintain their independence while thoughtfully embracing useful technology. These systems are also remarkably flexible. One family shared how they gradually expanded their solar setup over 5 years, increasing capacity as their needs grew and their understanding of the technology deepened. If you're inspired by their approach, you might be wondering how to apply these principles to your own home. After countless hours observing and studying Amish setups, I've distilled their wisdom into a practical guide that doesn't require giving up your Wi-Fi, unless you're up for that challenge. First, let's talk location. Planning is key. For a basic setup similar to what many Amish families use, you'll need about 400 square feet of south-facing space, roughly the size of a 2-car garage. Now, the big question, cost. A basic Amish-style solar system will run you between $3,000 and $5,000. While it might seem like a significant investment, consider this. It's less than what many people spend on coffee over a few years. Here's a simple shopping list to get started. 4 to 6 solar panels. This setup generates between 400 and 600 watts of power, costing roughly $1,200 to $1,800 in total. Here's a breakdown of the expenses. Basic charge controller, $200 to $300. Deep cycle batteries, $800 to $1,200. Inverter, optional but practical unless you're planning to go full Amish, $400 to $600. Mounting hardware and wiring, $400 to $600. The installation process is simple enough that even I managed it without turning my home into a sci-fi experiment. Start with the mounting frame, which Amish communities often craft from treated wood or metal poles for ground-based systems. Then, install the panels and run the wiring to your charge controller and battery bank. You can complete the entire setup over a weekend, though you might want to reserve extra time if you're prone to accidental innovations, like wiring your garage door opener to your doorbell. One piece of advice I picked up from an Amish craftsman: begin small and scale up as needed. Start by powering only your essentials, maybe a refrigerator and a few lights. This phased approach not only reduces upfront costs, but also gives you a chance to master your system. As the craftsman put it, you wouldn't buy a horse before learning to ride, would you? The beauty of this system lies in its simplicity. No complicated grid tie-ins, no sprawling arrays of panels, just straightforward, manageable power generation that you can maintain on your own. When it comes to storing solar energy for cloudy days, the Amish have come up with clever solutions. And no, they're not scavenging Tesla batteries from abandoned electric buggies. Most Amish families rely on deep-cycle lead-acid batteries, though some forward-thinking communities have begun experimenting with lithium iron phosphate, LiFePO4 batteries. A typical battery setup consists of 4 to 8 batteries connected in series, capable of storing 4 to 8 kilowatt-hours of energy. That's enough power to keep essential appliances running for several cloudy days. Here's the cost breakdown. 4 deep-cycle batteries at $400 each, $1,600. Battery monitor, $300. Smart charging system, $500. Cables and connectors, $200. Ventilated battery housing unit, $400. With a basic battery system costing between $2,000 and $4,000, the savings can be significant. An average family using this setup can cut their electricity bills by 50 to 70%, translating to around $1,800 in annual savings. Most families start with minimal storage, enough for critical needs, about 2 kilowatt-hours, and gradually expand their capacity over time. Maintenance is simple and manageable. Monthly water level checks for lead-acid batteries, quarterly terminal cleaning, and daily voltage monitoring. Some communities have taken battery storage a step further by creating communal energy resources. Families share larger battery banks for their collective workshop needs, coordinating usage schedules to ensure everyone stays powered while strengthening their sense of community. If you're impressed by this ingenuity, wait until you hear about how some Amish groups are harnessing the wind. Those spinning turbines you might spot behind Amish barns aren't just decorative. They're part of a wind energy tradition that started in the 1980s. Today, wind power has gained traction in Amish communities across the windier regions of the Midwest, especially in Indiana and Michigan. Unlike solar panels, wind turbines bring their own set of challenges and rewards, but that's a story for another day. The adoption of wind energy among Amish communities wasn't without its challenges, especially for more traditional groups. However, over time, wind power gained broader acceptance. As one elder put it, wind is a gift from God that has been turning mills since biblical times. Hard to argue with that perspective. The guidelines surrounding wind energy in Amish communities demonstrate their practical outlook on technology. Most districts permit wind turbines as long as they are used for specific tasks, such as powering workshops or farm equipment. Height restrictions vary depending on the community, but the turbines generally don't exceed 40 feet, roughly the height of a well-built barn. One bishop summed it up humorously: "We aim to catch the wind, not reach heaven." What's particularly intriguing is how wind energy aligns seamlessly with the Amish commitment to self-reliance. Harvesting wind for power is about as independent as it gets. Plus, unlike solar panels, which require advanced manufacturing, many components of basic wind turbines can be constructed in Amish workshops. I even saw a group of teenage boys from one family assembling most of their turbine, with the father admitting that only the electrical parts had to be sourced from English suppliers. Regional acceptance of wind energy also varies. In northern Indiana, wind turbines are a common sight, spinning freely in open areas. By contrast, some Pennsylvania communities prefer to place them discreetly behind barns or along tree lines. A Michigan farmer shared how they initially worried that turbines might draw unwanted attention from tourists. He joked, "Turns out people are too busy taking pictures of our buggies to notice what's keeping our milk cool." The rules for wind energy are straightforward and practical. Turbines must serve a functional purpose, cannot be connected to the grid, and should remain modest in appearance to maintain the community's humble aesthetic. Some districts add unique stipulations, such as requiring turbines to be shut off during Sunday services, or mandating that towers be painted in neutral colors like black or white. Now let's dive into how these wind turbines are actually installed. Putting up an Amish wind turbine is an operation filled with the same communal spirit you'd find at a barn raising, just with less wood and more mechanics. Over time, Amish communities have refined their methods to a near art form, crafting systems that would impress any engineer. A typical Amish wind turbine stands between 30 and 40 feet tall and produces 2 to 5 kilowatts of power, enough to power a mid-sized woodworking shop or keep a small dairy operation running smoothly. The total cost ranges from $4,000 to $7,000. Here's the breakdown. Turbine, $2,000 to $3,000 tower and mounting hardware, $1,500 charge controller and inverter system, $800 battery storage, $1,000 wiring and controls, $500. The installation process is just as ingenious. Many communities opt for tilt-up towers, which allow the turbines to be lowered for maintenance without the need for a daredevil climb. The base of the tower is typically secured in a 4-foot-deep concrete foundation, with guy wires providing additional stability. At one farm, I noticed that the family had marked the guy wire anchors with old buggy wheels. Practical, yet decorative. They laughed and assured me it was purely coincidental. When operational, these turbines are surprisingly efficient, generating power for essential equipment while staying true to their values. The Amish have once again proven that they can innovate without compromising their way of life. In regions with steady winds averaging 12 miles per hour, a typical Amish wind turbine can generate approximately 300 kilowatt-hours of electricity per month. As one farmer humorously explained, "That's enough to power every tool in my workshop and keep the ice cream frozen." Priorities, right? Remarkably, most families recover their initial investment in 4 to 6 years through energy savings. Thinking about adopting a similar approach, start by checking your local wind speeds. You'll want an average of at least 10 miles per hour for optimal results. A handy tip from an Amish installer: if your laundry isn't drying on the line, a wind turbine might not be your best option. Additionally, you'll need a 40 by 40 foot clear area, free from trees and buildings. Don't forget to review local zoning regulations before breaking ground for the tower. But wind power isn't the only innovative energy solution embraced by Amish communities. Some have turned to a rather unexpected source of energy that might make you see diesel engines in a whole new light. Diesel and alternative fuels. Imagine the steady hum of a diesel engine becoming a staple of Amish life. In communities across northern Indiana and central Ohio, diesel power has become as integral as homemade bread on Sunday. This shift began in the late 1970s, when a resourceful Amish farmer discovered that a stationary diesel engine could run his entire workshop while staying true to his community's principles. "It's not about speed," he reportedly said. "It's about steady progress." The use of diesel power in Amish communities is guided by thoughtfully crafted rules. Stationary diesel engines are permitted for specific tasks, such as running workshop machinery, powering milk coolers, or operating large washing machines for family-run businesses. The key: these engines are stationary, serving as permanent power hubs rather than mobile devices for transportation. The numbers behind diesel power. A typical diesel setup for an Amish workshop ranges in cost between $3,000 and $6,000, broken down as follows. Engine, $2,000 generator head, $1,500 fuel storage system, $800 electrical components. $700 fuel costs are surprisingly economical. Many Amish communities have established bulk purchasing agreements, bringing the price of diesel down to around $2.50 per gallon. Some communities have even ventured into biodiesel production, recycling waste vegetable oil into fuel. A well-maintained diesel generator consumes about 5 gallons of fuel daily, costing around $1,250 annually. In return, it can power an entire furniture workshop, generating thousands of dollars in revenue. One craftsman shared his meticulously kept ledger, showing that his diesel-powered system paid for itself in just 18 months, thanks to increased productivity. Biodiesel, an ingenious solution. Some Amish groups have taken diesel innovation a step further by producing their own biodiesel from used cooking oil collected from local restaurants. The process involves filtering the oil and converting it into fuel through a simple chemical reaction. One Amish mechanic joked, "Our engines run on French fry power." The savings are significant. Producing biodiesel costs these communities less than $1.50 per gallon. Not only does this reduce expenses, but it also exemplifies the Amish commitment to resourcefulness and sustainability. Diesel might grab the spotlight as a fossil fuel reshaping Amish life, but it's not the only one making an impact. There's another gas-powered shift underway, quietly transforming how these communities cook, heat, and sustain their businesses. Ever wondered how an Amish home stays cozy during the bitter chill of winter without relying on electricity? Enter Propane, a game-changer in Amish energy independence. Propane has become the unsung hero in their daily lives, fueling everything from stoves to industrial machinery. Unlike grid electricity, propane aligns perfectly with Amish values. It's straightforward, dependable, and keeps them free from external dependencies. As one Amish farmer aptly put it, "It's like having a loyal workhorse, except this one doesn't need feeding when it's not working." What makes propane so essential in Amish communities is its remarkable flexibility. An average Amish household uses between 800 to 1,000 gallons of propane each year. It powers their stoves, heats their homes, runs refrigerators, and even drives machinery for small businesses. Whether it's firing up a blacksmith's forge or keeping ice cream perfectly frozen, propane gets the job done with impressive versatility. Now, let's dive into the numbers, and don't worry, I'll spare you the cheesy gas price jokes. A standard propane setup for a home includes a 500-gallon tank, which costs about $1,200 to buy. However, most families choose to lease one for approximately $100 per year. Adding in piping and regulators costs around $600, while essential appliances like stoves and water heaters total about $2,000. As for the fuel itself, many Amish communities have negotiated bulk purchasing agreements, securing rates of about $1.75 per gallon, much lower than what their non-Amish neighbors typically pay. The savings are undeniable. One family shared their detailed energy ledger with me, handwritten in impeccable script, and their yearly propane costs came to just $1,600. That covered cooking, heating, refrigeration, and even fuel for their small candy-making business. Compare that to the average American household's utility expenses, and it's clear why propane puts a smile on their faces and savings in their pockets. But there's more to this story. The propane supply chain in Amish areas is fascinating. Many communities work closely with local suppliers for direct farm deliveries. In larger settlements, they've even established their own propane cooperatives, buying in bulk and distributing the fuel among members. It's like a buying club, explained one Amish businessman, except instead of discounts on fabric, we're cutting costs on gas. And while propane powers much of modern Amish life, some communities still stick with tried and true methods. Traditional energy sources, like water wheels, continue to turn in certain areas, proving that even as times change, some things remain timeless. Before engines revolutionized workshops, how did people power their tools? Let me share a fascinating story about how some Amish communities still harness the power of moving water to keep their machinery running. Long before propane tanks or solar panels, there was the reliable water wheel, nature's very own powerhouse. While many of us think of water wheels as relics of the past, some Amish settlements have brought this ancient technology into the modern era. And trust me, these are not your great-great-grandfather's water wheels. In regions like Holmes County, Ohio, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where streams and small rivers are abundant, water power is making a remarkable comeback. Today's water wheel systems in these communities are capable of generating between 3 and 5 horsepower, sufficient to operate a fully equipped woodworking shop. One craftsman I visited had a setup that powered everything from his lathe to his bandsaw, all fueled by a stream no wider than a typical garden hose. You might be surprised at the cost of setting up a water-powered system. A complete installation ranges from $5,000 to $8,000, depending on the site and complexity of the setup. Here's how it breaks down. The water wheel itself: $2,000 shaft and gearing system, $1,500. Channel construction, $2,000. Mechanical power transfer system, $1,500. While the upfront investment isn't small, the irony is that once the system is operational, the energy source, water, is completely free. The brilliance lies in how these communities have refined the technology. Modern Amish water wheels now incorporate sealed bearings and durable materials that require minimal upkeep and can last for decades. They've also found innovative ways to ensure reliability. Many communities construct small retention ponds above their workshops, creating a consistent water supply even during dry spells. Think of it as a battery, one Amish builder explained, except this one recharges every time it rains. The power output from these systems is impressive. A well-designed water wheel can produce roughly 1,000 watts of continuous energy, operating 24/7, as long as the water keeps flowing. That translates to over 8,000 kilowatt hours annually, more than enough to power a bustling workshop. One woodworker proudly shared that his water-powered shop hasn't faced a power shortage in 15 years, except for the time some mischievous beavers decided to remodel his water channel. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of these water-powered workshops isn't just the technology itself. It's the way they perfectly blend tradition with modern ingenuity. As one Amish craftsman told me while proudly showcasing his setup, "Sometimes the old ways really are the best ways, we just make them work a little smarter."